Right. Good afternoon. Welcome to the CAWASA Wednesday webinars for water operators in the Caribbean. Our webinars will bring you topics across the spectrum of the water sector, water and wastewater sectors, with a diversity of presenters. This is webinar number 12 in the 2021 series. I trust that all of you and your families and colleagues at work are keeping safe from the COVID-19 difficult pandemic, and that as we are doing in the water sector is helping to keep everybody safe by providing them with good quality water and sewage facilities. So this afternoon we have with us as our guest presenter Mr. Junior Frank of the Water and Sewage Authority of Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Frank is well known to CAWASA. He has attended, and those of you who have attended our conferences will have met with Mr. Frank. He is quite an avid supporter of CAWASA's conferences, and he's also pretty good at participating in the challenges that we have during the water operators competition. So I'd like to welcome Mr. Frank and his assistant, who is giving him good support this afternoon with his presentation. He's going to present to us on safety at water and wastewater facilities. The floor is now yours, Mr. Frank. Mr. Frank is also a safety officer at his workplace. Over to you. The floor is yours, Mr. Frank.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. Mr. Gill, how are you doing? As I was taught, it's music to the ear of a safety professional when we are requested to present information on health and safety in the workplace to audiences like you people. I must again say good afternoon, or it's good evening, and welcome to today's session for our CAWASA brothers and sisters. Safety in the treatment plant. I did basically a water production and water presentation and not wastewater. The aim of today's discussion is to identify the following: the role of occupational safety and health in water treatment plants, health and safety in the production of potable water, and in that we'll deal with the hazards in the treatment and some safe systems of work, chemicals in the production of potable water, and emergency evacuation. The objective is for all of us to understand the importance of safety in the water treatment and how can it impact on us and the people around us. Let me do some general introduction. Let me say something about myself. I am Junior Frank. I am Tobagonian by birth, Trinidadian by boat. That makes me a Trinbagonian. I've been employed in the water industry for the last 40 years and in the health and safety department for about 20 of those years. The last 10 years I've been in the management of the health and safety department at the Water and Sewage Authority in Trinidad and Tobago. Presently, I operate as the manager of health and safety. I may look good to you, good and young to you, but I've torn plenty calendars. So let's get right into the meat of this afternoon's business. Occupational health and safety in the workplace. What is occupational health and safety in the workplace? It is described as a multidisciplinary field concerned with the safety, health, and welfare of people at work. It saves lives and it reduces expenditure from accidents and incidents and other things that may happen from unsafe acts in the workplace. The main purpose of workplace safety is to protect workers from the various hazards that are present in performing one's daily tasks / operations. As we all taught, the human resources is the most important resource in the workplace, and therefore the protection of this resource is of paramount importance. Working safely and doing safe systems of work will ensure that we work safely and produce water for the nation, especially in this COVID-19 time. I want to talk a little about the COVID-19 pandemic. COVID-19 is real. It's a real dangerous situation. I could talk about Trinidad and Tobago. The numbers were extremely high today of new cases and I think deaths. So it is important that we protect ourselves at all times. Social distancing, wearing of face covering, washing and cleaning of our hands and the other protocols that comes with COVID-19. Water for ablutionary purposes, such as washing of hands, cleaning, sanitizing, etc., are essential part in preventing and protecting human health during this current COVID-19 pandemic. Therefore, it's extremely important to have a continuous supply of potable water available for proper hygiene, as this serves as a barrier to human transmission of this COVID-19 pandemic. I will switch now to the role of occupational health and safety in the workplace. Occupational health and safety in the workplace is basically a three-prong approach. It's legal, it's moral, and financial. Financial, the cause of accidents, injury, and injury in the workplace are extremely expensive. Being the manager of health and safety, I review lots of workplace accidents, and accidents are very, very expensive. We basically look at, when we look at our workplace accidents, we really don't get the total cost of the accidents, all right? I've seen accidents that will appear to be fairly simple and minor, cost millions of dollars, all right? In safety, we say it's not what would it cost us in the beginning, but what will be the final savings when we have proper health and safety procedures in the workplace. The moral part of occupational health and safety is the expectation of good standards of health and safety. When you come to work, you're expected to work in a safe environment, free from harm and risk, so that you will avoid injury in the workplace. We need you to come back to work tomorrow. And if you are injured and you cannot come back, it's costly to replace you. All right? There's no cost in replacing a life. So it's important that the moral aspect of health and safety be taken seriously. And then the legal aspect. It's a law in Trinidad and Tobago, and I think most of the Caribbean, most of the countries that CAWASA have a relationship with. And seeing that is a legal implication, the employer have a duty to protect his workers from all harm and danger, because the employer and or the employee may face legal consequences for operating in an unsafe manner. The legal aspects continue. In Trinidad and Tobago, the Occupational Health and Safety Act 2004 as amended is the principal piece of legislation that deals with health and safety in the workplace. In this legislation, there are several sections, and it entails the general duties of the employer, the employee, the right to refuse to work if there's unsafe condition, safety in the workplace, a fire section, a section that deals with health, a section that deals with welfare. These are some of the main parts of the Act. We'll go into a little more about these parts. The general duties. Each employer have a general duty, has general duties. And part of those general duties is ensuring the health, safety, and welfare of all employees at work. The employer must provide a good plan, provide and maintain safe plans and safe systems of work that are reasonable, practical for the safe work without risk to health. It's also the duty to obtain and or prepare prescribed, unexpired safety data sheets to deal with all the hazardous chemicals present at the workplace. The employer is also duty bound to determine the risk in the workplace and come up with a risk assessment so that the employees would be working in a safer environment. Safety. The employer is duty bound to provide protecting clothing and device of an approved standard with instructions. The employer cannot just give you a new piece of equipment to work. He's supposed to provide the training and instruction so that you work safely. Ensure adequate ventilation by either natural or artificial means. The removal of dust and other impurities. Have safe systems for confined space entry. Where there's 25 or more employees, the employer must have a health and safety committee between the management and the employees to deal with occupational health and safety in the workplace. We must also have effective safeguards for guarding against machinery, especially moving parts. Under the section that deals with fire, the employer is duty bound to provide adequate means of escape from a fire. So your emergency escape must be of good standing, must obtain a fire certificate from the prescribed authority, instruction as how to use and maintain instruction as to use the use of maintain for escaping fire, and adequate firefighting equipment in the workplace. Be it a fire extinguisher or a hose reel. It must be up to date and that the employees could use it. Another section that deals with health in the Act, it talked about cleanliness, the need for respiratory protection, adequate lighting and the prevention of glare. Noise and vibration must be not an issue. There mustn't be overcrowding in the workplace. The Act says that each employee should have 11.5 cubic meters of space and also suitable ventilation. Welfare. The employer is supposed to provide welfare, first aid kits, first aid boxes or cupboard that is under the control of a trained first aider. It also says in every factory, effective arrangement shall be made to provide and maintain suitable points conveniently situated for all persons employed to have a cool supply of drinking water. We must provide proper drinking water. A cool supply, not necessarily a cold supply. There must be proper place for washing, urinals and other sources, and it must be not contaminated. I've also talked about the fines and penalties. Fine range is up to $100,000, and the imprisonment could be up to 3 years. The Act speaks about where there's no specific penalty, it could be provided up to $20,000. When you're talking about the range, the fines, a prominent union leader was charged recently for deploying a fire alarm system when there was no fire in the workplace. And also there's the notification of injury and illness. Death and critical injury must be reported immediately, and the non-critical injury should be reported within 4 days. To know about the safety for the water, for the treatment of water, we must know about the process of water treatment and how we interact with the process. It is said that the core function of a water treatment plant is to provide potable water. And as we know, potable water is water that has been treated to an international standard that is fit for consumption, human consumption. Basically, we will look at the WHO standards. Also, water must be palatable, aesthetically pleasing to be acceptable for drinking. You wouldn't want to see some discolored water to have a drink of it. All right, so that the water must be have no color. Say water is colorless. Water treatment is the process involving different types of operation: physical, chemical, psychochemical, and biological. The aim is to eliminate and or reduce contamination of non-desirable characteristics in the water. This slide that we have here is the basic outlay of a treatment process. Raw water comes from wells, lakes, rivers, streams. Example, that is raw water. It goes through a process called coagulation, where chemicals are added to the water, causing it to have some flock. The flock will drop to the bottom. The cleaner water is transported to the sedimentation basin or the sedimentation tank, where settlement continues. After that water is settled, the cleaner water goes to filtration, where the water is filtered to take out some of the impurities, and then it is disinfected where it is stored, a tank, sometimes we call them the clear well, and then transported to the consumers. This is another water treatment process. We have pre-treatment for flocculation, filtration, disinfection, and distribution to the consumers. This is what we're going to discuss now is basically some of the treatment process in one of the stations in Trinidad. Water is drawn into the plant through the use of pumps from the river as the intake. Screens stop large objects such as wood, leaves, and other types of debris from entering into the treatment process. As you can see, these are some of the screens that stop the debris from entering into the treatment process. And then in the water, the next step is aluminum sulfate, polymer, and chlorine. There is different types of chemical are added to the water at what we call the headworks. All right, these different types of chemical, when introduced at this point, are mixed quickly and evenly with the raw water, and then the water goes to the fluctuation basin. At this part of the plant, it is designed to mix the chemical with the water, producing floc. The cleaner or clearer water is sent to the next stage, and the heavier floc drops to the bottom of the basin. The next stage is sedimentation. In this process is the removal of some of the solids from the water by gravity settling. The thick floc settles to the bottom of the basin, where it is referred as sludge. This sludge is channeled to the sludge lagoon, where it is settled further. The waste from the lagoon is returned to the headworks, so that much of the water is not really wasted, of the raw water. Then there's the filtration process. After the sedimentation, the water is filtered in the sediment, water is filtered from the sedimentation basis. This helps remove any fine or suspended matter, as well as any floc carryover. The remain after any floc that remains after the coagulation and the sedimentation process. The final stage is basically disinfectant, where chlorine is applied to the water to kill any bacteria or viruses. Generally, chlorine is applied, gaseous chlorine is applied at between 2.5 to about 5 parts per million. We'll discuss some of the workplace chemicals that is used in the treatment of water. We have chlorine. Chlorine could be gaseous, liquid, or granular. There's aluminum sulfate, where we generally call alum. There is lime, carbon, polymer, and a whole range of different chemicals based on the treatment process. To effectively deal with To effectively deal with chemicals, we must know to safely and effectively deal with chemicals, we must know what we are doing. There's a document called the SDS or the MSDS, the Safety Data Sheet or the Material Safety Data Sheet. This is a document that lists information relating to occupational safety and health for the use of chemical substances and products. The safety data sheets are widely used systems for classification of information on chemical compound and chemical mixtures. The SDS information will include instructions for the safe use and potential hazards associated with a particular material or product, along with spill handling procedures. A safety data sheet for a substance is not primarily intended for the use of general consumers, but focusing instead on the hazards of working with the material in an occupational setting. There's also a duty to properly label substance found in the workplace. The picture we see here is a material safety data sheet or a safety data sheet for chlorine gas. It basically have about 16 sections. The first section talks about is the identification of the chemical as well as its recommended uses. The second section will talk about the hazards. All right, the hazard classification of the chemical, it is flammable, liquid, etc. There's a picture. This section will tell you about a pictogram to tell you the dangers of the chemical. If you see a skull and a crossbow, we know that it will kill you. Section 3 talks about the substance and its mixtures. This section identifies the ingredients contained in the product indicated by the safety data sheet, including impurities and what to do to stabilize the chemical. Section 4 speaks about the first aid measures, what to do if you're exposed to the chemical. Section 5, firefighting methods. Section 6 talks about accidental release. We could skip some of the sections. Section 11 talks about the toxicology information. And section 14 talks about how we transport the chemical. It is important to have a safety data sheet or a material safety data sheet in the event of someone is exposed to the chemical. When we take that to a medical institution, it will give the medical practitioners much needed information about the chemical that was exposed to the person or the person was exposed. There are several accidents and incidents in the water treatment process. There's chlorine spills, there's manual handling accidents and incidents, there are fall from heights, etc. There was this accident at a treatment plant in Tobago where an employee fell off a ladder. It cost the organization about, I think it's about $300,000 and counting. And then the organization was taken to the court by the authorities for not providing safe systems of work for that employee. In the workplace, there are several hazards And we consider that a hazard is a potential source of harm or adverse health effects on a person or persons. The term hazards and risk are generally interchanged. I will provide you an example so that you'll know the difference between a risk and a hazard. If there's a leak and resulting water on the floor, on the ground, this could cause a slipping and tripping hazard to persons who are traversing the area. But if the area was physically barricaded, so it would be difficult for someone to access that area, the hazard will be present, but the risk will be decreased. In our workspace, there are several physical hazards. Noise above 85 decibels will affect your hearing. And if you're in that environment for over 8-hour period, it could permanently affect your hearing. There's also moving machine accidents, a forklift in your area. There's slipping and tripping from poor housekeeping. Example, if water is spilled or some liquid is spilled. Most of the pumps produce heat. And if we get close to these devices, we could be burned. And unfortunately, sometimes there are projectiles that we may be struck with. These are some of the physical hazards in the workplace. We also have mechanical and accidental hazards. Fall from height, as I said, the guy who fell off the ladder. Contact with machinery. Struck by moving parts. Caught between rotation, the shaft and a pump and motor is spinning extremely fast. And if it's possible that clothing or other parts could be caught between there and cause serious accidents. And there's also the issue of walking around or over a body of water. These are things that could cause mechanical or accidental. These are mechanical accidental hazards. Also in the workplace, we have biological hazards where people may get in contact with raw water sludge or the raw water, the untreated water. The operator could be attacked by wildlife. In Trinidad, there are some deadly snakes. In some of the water, some of the streams, we have caimans. I've seen accidents where bees and wasps attack people in the workplace. There's also biological there's also bacteria and viruses where pigeon and bat and rat droppings could cause you to be affected in the workplace. There's also ergonomic hazards. Poor manual handling techniques, poor lifting techniques, where you try to lift with your back and not with your legs. Where there's repetitive motion, we may have to do the same thing over and over again. That could put some strain on our lower back or body. Awkward and prolonged uncomfortable posture. Based on the design of the plant, we may be working in an uncomfortable situation and looking at a computer, the display screen equipment are some of the ergonomic hazards that we will be exposed to. And there's also psychosocial hazards, where stress in the workplace where you're trying to finish something in the time, it might be too short of a time. There could be violence. There also could be also noise could be a psychosocial problem. And criminal activities. We have seen that some of the gangs these days are stealing scrap iron, metal from the plants as scrap iron. These could be psychosocial hazards that we have to deal with in the workplace. But to overcome these hazards and risk and unsafe activities, there are safe systems of work which, if adhered to, could save the day for us. So basically, we could have risk assessment, a job safety analysis, permit to work, toolbox meeting, safety data sheets, the hierarchy of control, emergency response plan, training, inspection, etc. So the first safe system of work we want to talk about is the risk assessment and job safety analysis. A risk assessment is a broad-based assessment of a task, identifying and analyzing the event that may affect the operation. On the screen there is the front page of a risk assessment, and it tells you the location is a water treatment plant, and the task is for changing chlorine. I don't know how good you're seeing it, right? And they ask what are the hazards. It could be a mechanical or accidental, slip, trip, and fall while traversing. Who might be harmed or injured? All right, the process, the operator, the attendant, the maintenance people. How do we control the measure? By daily housekeeping, by cleaning up spills, by the use of proper PPE, and then we'll have a risk assessment, have a justification for the risk ratings. All right, and we could add additional controls to determine, to lessen the risk at the end of the day. And job safety analysis, on the other hand, is when we break down the job into smaller parts, identifying safety components for each part. If we have to change a tire, we could break down that whole operation into several different parts. So you're driving up the road, you've got a puncture, you need to change the tire. First, you're parking in a safe location. You exit the vehicle, you put your safety, if it's cones or signs, you put all your safety things outside there, and then we would retrieve, we'll take out the spare tire, we will jack up the vehicle, we'll take off the defective tire, put on back the spare tire, tighten back the tire, jack down the vehicle, take up our safety signs and cones and whatever, and then we proceed again. In this way, there was about 6 or 7 parts of changing safely a tire, and we could add the safety components to each of the parts. Permit to work is another safe system of work. A permit to work is a management system used to ensure work is done safely and effectively, and to make high-risk tasks safely, all right? In the workplace, in my operations, we have 4 types of permits. We use a general permit that is used for all jobs. If we have to do confined space work, you must have a general permit and a confined space permit. If we have to do hot work, any work that emits heat, we'll have to have a general permit and a hot work permit. And all electrical work needs a electrical permit also. So it's possible that you could have all the permits in one operation. You could have a general permit working in a confined space because you have to do some welding in that confined space. So we need a hot permit there. And we also need to do some electrical work because the electrician may have to provide artificial lighting. So we could use all the permits in one operation. Toolbox Talk, or some people call it safety talk. It's basically a short safety chat. Some people say about 5 to 15 minutes before the job starts about the execution of the job. All right, we could basically talk on any topic. By the end of the day, it should relate to how we will safely execute the job. So if we are changing chlorine, the toolbox talk might be about PP, about personal protective equipment, and changing chlorine. The safety data sheet, we spoke about that earlier, so I wouldn't really go through that again. And the other safe system of work I want to talk about is the hierarchy of control. The hierarchy of control is a system for controlling risk in the workplace by ranking the risk from the highest to the lowest. So when we look at the risk, we could try to eliminate it if it's possible. If it's not possible, we'll do a substitution. If that also is not possible, we could try to isolate the risk. Then we could use some engineering controls by using mechanical aids and things like that to assist in the risk. And then we could do some administrative controls, training, time management, so that if we're working in an environment that have poor ventilation, we might decide that people could only work for half an hour and rest before they go back. And the last item in the hierarchy of control is the personal protective equipment. Some people feel that personal protective equipment is first, but it should be done after we try every other control to make the workplace safe. But the personal protective equipment could also be used with the other hierarchies of control. After we eliminate some of the hazards, or we know to control the hazards, things could happen. So we must know how to deal in an emergency when an emergency happens. So we're supposed to have an emergency evacuation plan for fire, how to evacuate the building. This emergency evacuation for fire will give general direction how to meet at a designated evacuation location. It starts with somebody pulling the alarm, calling the fire authorities. We use a fire extinguisher if possible. We go to the muster point and have a head count. In a fire emergency, we don't use chairs. We use stairs, not elevator. We could also have an emergency response plan for severe weather if our station our station is in a flood prone of station is prone to flood, in a flood zone, we will have to design an emergency response plan for when that situation happen. Also for emergency services and violence. Also, in this day of COVID and COVID-19, we need to have a plan in the event that someone falls ill or show signs that they may be exposed to the virus. I was taught that safety is everybody's business. It really starts with the man in the mirror. So, and that is you. So thank you for being in this session, and I am here looking to answer any questions that you may not have or clear up any misconceptions that may have came up during the presentation.
Thank you very much, Frank, for a very frank conversation with us and on matters to do with safety at the workplace. The floor is now open, participants, for any questions you may have or observations you may have with Frank. Please go ahead. I don't see any messages in the chat.
Hi, good afternoon. Nicole Austin here from Barbados. I am asking if you have to go to a remote location to do some monitoring, maybe of a borehole or measurements for or sampling for water point, that would go into your hazard that was the one that had it got the picture with the burglar and or the stress.
Well, basically every operation that we should undertake, it is important to do a risk assessment, and based on what we come up with, because if you say you're going out to do some measurements in a remote location, there could be psychosocial, it could be there could be physical hazards, because there might, based on the terrain, it could be slipping. There may be biological hazards. I don't know of Barbados that good. I don't know if you have snakes and reptiles and that kind of thing.
We have flying cockroaches.
Dangerous flying cockroaches. I don't know if it might have bees and that kind of thing, and it could fall under also poor manual handling techniques if you have to carry some of the equipments, and then it may be you may have to be in an awkward position for a prolonged time, so it could be any one of those. But when we do the risk assessment, we take the job and we break down the job into stages. And we'll try to add the safety components to it. We will see where best it would fall in. I hope that answers part of your question.
Yes, that did actually. So I understand from the sheet, the risk assessment sheet that you did, you would break it down into the steps that you described, and then you go from there. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Thank you, Nicole, for that. Questions, please.
John,
Yeah.
we do some safety publications at work.
Right.
So one of the things I could do is send it to you
Sure.
so that you could share it with the group. Especially
Absolutely.
at this time, we're doing plenty about COVID and that kind of thing. So I'll make that available to you.
Yeah, that'd be welcome. You could send it to me, and I will, when I circulate the recordings, I can also share it with them.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. Well, if there are no further questions, I'd like to thank you very much, Frank, and your able assistant for, right, good to see you.
Same here.
For giving us this wonderful presentation this afternoon, and we hope that we can continue doing more of these.
Yeah, no problem, man. I have spoke to my team at the organization, and they will be willing to assist CAWASA. I tell them CAWASA is like I have plenty of friends in the Caribbean, and CAWASA is like home.
All right, great. Because we do have participants, we have had participants out of Jamaica and going as far south as, I don't think we've had anyone from Guyana join us just yet, but as far as Trinidad. So we cover most of the Caribbean region and operators together, and that's what we need to do, to share the information, share our knowledge. So we'd like you, the operators who are participating, feel free, you could send me an email if you would like to make a presentation on some area of your expertise at your workplace. And we certainly will give you the opportunity. And it helps you with your whole personal development in being able to publish and present your work. So we do invite that as well and encourage you to do it. So again, we want to thank everyone for your participation. And yes, certainly we will be posting the recording on YouTube at CAWASA's education at YouTube, and you could just Google, search CAWASA on YouTube, and you will find it later this evening. Thank you very much. I'm Ignatius Jean, the Executive Director of CAWASA, signing off. Our Wednesday webinar number 12 of 2021. Good evening all, and keep safe and well. Bye.